Welcome back, everyone. Megaera is the fifth boss in the Throne of Thunder. We have a written guide for this boss, and we recommend checking it out for more details. The link is in the description. You will need 2 tanks for this fight, but the number of healers can vary. 2 or 3 healers in 10 man and between 5 and 7 and 25 man all work depending on your raid group. Megaera is a Hydra, and you will spend the entire duration of the fight battling against her heads. You will need to kill 7 heads to defeat the boss. Her body is not attackable and only serves as an indication of how close you are to killing her. She loses a percentage of health for each head that is killed. There are always 2 heads near the platform and you can attack them. Each of these heads is either a flaming head that deals fire damage, a frozen head that deals frost damage, or a venomous head that deals nature damage. The 2 heads are always of a different type, so a flaming head combination is not possible, for example. When you kill a head, let's say a venomous head, then 2 heads of the same type will spawn at the back of the cave, so 2 venomous heads in this case. There, these heads will keep attacking you, but you cannot attack them. This means that the fight becomes more difficult as more heads are piling up at the back of the cave. Also, killing a head causes both heads near the platform to respawn with full health, but the head you've just killed is replaced with a head of a different type. So if you had a frozen head and a flaming head and you kill the flaming head, then a frozen head and a venomous head will respawn. Moreover, when you kill a head, the remaining head receives a stack of Hydra Frenzy when it respawns. Each stack of this buff increases attack speed by 20% until you kill that head. So if, for example, you keep killing the flaming head and the frozen head, the venomous head is going to do more and more damage, eventually killing the tank. Finally, whenever a head reappears after having been killed, it gains a stack of Elemental Blood of Megaera. Each stack of this buff increases the magic damage done by all heads of that type by 10% until the end of the fight. Without even looking at the abilities of the heads, the overall strategy for the fight is already apparent. You need to kill the heads in a balanced fashion, so that none of them reaches high stacks of Hydra Frenzy and so that the damage increase they receive remains as low as possible. It appears that the first heads will always be the frozen head and the venomous head, so simply start with the frozen head, then kill the venomous head, then the flaming head, and so on. The idea is simply to always kill the head that was there when you killed the previous head. The damage will ramp up at the end of the fight because there will be more and more heads attacking you from the back of the cave. Also, all the heads, including those at the back of the cave, will be doing more and more damage because of Elemental Blood of Megaera. With all that out of the way, we can look at what each of the heads does and how you should handle them. The most important ability is called Rampage. It's a very damaging raid-wide attack that the heads near the platform use for 20 seconds after you kill a head. This is simply something that you need to live through. Have the raid stack up and use healing and defensive cooldowns to survive. Because of Elemental Blood of Megaera, the stacking buff we mentioned earlier, Rampage will do more and more damage, and the key to defeating Megaera is to survive through the last 2 rampages. When the heads near the platform are not rampaging, they need to be tanked and turned away from the raid. They deal damage with their melee attack, and they do a breath attack that applies a stacking debuff on their tank, which eventually requires a tank switch. The frozen head casts Arctic Freeze, which deals frost damage and applies a debuff that freezes affected players when it reaches 5 stacks. The flaming head casts Ignite Flesh, which deals fire damage and stacks a fire damage dot on affected players. The venomous head casts Wrought Armor, which deals nature damage and stacks a debuff that causes players to take 10% increased damage per stack. It is possible and easier to switch only after a head is killed, but it is also viable to do it more often. If a tank switches from the flaming head to the venomous head or vice versa, the damage will be very high until the debuff from the previous head drops, so this is something healers and tanks need to be prepared for. The heads at the back of the cave have 1 ability each. They cast these at the raid regularly throughout the fight. The frozen head casts Torrent of Ice at a random raid member. This is a beam of ice that chases the player for 8 seconds, dealing damage at the point of impact and leaving behind damaging void zones called Icy Ground, which progressively slow the movement speed of anyone standing in them. The flaming head casts Cinders. This is a debuff applied to a random raid member which deals damage over 30 seconds and, when dispelled, leaves behind a damaging fire void zone. There is a crucial interaction between Torrent of Ice and Cinders. Players affected by the Cinders debuff remove any icy ground void zones when they walk over them, and the Torrent of Ice removes the fire void zones left behind by dispelling Cinders. Handling these abilities is not complicated. Players affected by Torrent of Ice should kite the beam away from melee range or from other raid members and over any fire void zones that may be up at the time. Players affected by Cinders should run over the icy ground void zones in order to remove them. The Venomous Head casts Acid Rain. This fires a ball of acid at the location of a random raid member which deals raid-wide damage when it lands. Players who are closer to the impact location take more damage, so everyone should move away from it in order to minimize the damage taken. Keep in mind that as the fight goes on, there will be more and more heads at the back of the cave, so there will be more and more things that the raid will have to avoid. So this fight is really all about avoiding to kill a head too often compared to the other, surviving the last rampages, and properly dealing with the abilities from the heads at the back of the cave. This is all you need to know to defeat Megaera. Thank you for watching and please subscribe.